Hello everyone, in today's video let's make these cool looking sci-fi futuristic rollerblades still from Mario's concept, and it's kind of ties into the previous video where I was making kind of the armor for the female. So this is the same art piece, and it's just these cool rollerblades, and I thought it would be interesting to try to make them in zBrush. So to get started, what I did was I just grabbed a block, and then I grabbed the knife curve tool and just started slicing from the side view, just looking at the reference, just looking at that kind of a dark burgundy piece. Just started to like slice it, you know, where it makes sense as far as the profile goes, right, of that image. And you can see that I'm just using Control-Shift to drag a line out, and then you just want to make sure that the part of the line that has the gradient in it is the one that's actually slicing. And then here to get that top curve one, if you just press Alt once, it will allow you to curve the brush, and if you double tap it really fast, it will create the sharp angle. So that's how you can control the knife tool and create both kind of a nice curvy slices as well as like the sharp, you know, 90-degree ones. And also here I am just trying to create that very front. Again, look at that brown dark burgundy piece. You can see that there's like this angle, very specific angle where the front kind of curves in. So I was trying to create that using the knife tool. Got my active symmetry on, and now I'm just going to scale it a little bit. I realize that's just a little bit thinner when you look at the reference. And then just continue slicing up the base, just doing the back next. And then for that blue kind of an inset that you see in the reference, I just figured I would just scale in the base one and just make it smaller and make it look like it's an inset instead of making like a line, right? After I did that, I started working on the wheels, and the wheels are simply a cylinder, right? And there's a couple different ways of doing the wheels. You could use the bevel tools here in ZBrush to kind of create different insets and different detail, but I thought it would be interesting to also maybe take advantage of Z modeler brush as well, to just kind of see if I can stay, initially at least, in the low poly mode and just do Z modeler brush instead. So you could see it's very easy. You just choose what you want by pressing spacebar, and if you are hovering over an edge, for example, you can quickly create a bevel, and then you can do an inset. You can see me doing that here, and just select a flat island. And then for the little piece inside the wheel, you can see that in the reference it's a little gray thing. Instead of playing around with more extrusion, I thought it would be much faster to just add yet another cylinder and just place it into position, as it seems very basic and very simple. Alright, so you can see me do that here. Once I got that in place, I just simply subdivided. I merged down the two pieces first, make sure they're, you know, they're together, right? And then if you do a mirror and weld, it'll flip it to the other side. And then if you Z remesh it and subdivide it, it's going to retain those nice clean edges. And again, this is not a game ready low poly model. This is just kind of a high res sculpt. Think of this as like the high res baking for like the substance painter, right? You bring in the low res and then you have the high res, and that's what this is. So this would be like considered the high res one. And then based on this, you would want to, you can either stay here and create a low poly frame, or you can just bring into Maya and create using quad draw or just using various tools, create like a low poly version of that, and then use both for baking, right? So once the wheels were done, I created 4 of them. You can see I'm attempting to kind of space them out based on the reference. I saw there's a little cleanup on the bottom, so it's easy enough. Just use the amazing knife tool to just slice and dice, right? So once I finished the cleanup, I realized by looking from the profile side view that that piece in front needs to be bent. And to bend that, I went old school. I switched to, by pressing Y, right, you can switch it back to the way the tools used to look like, right? So you can use this line in zBrush, and it allows you to bend things very easily and precisely. So instead of using like the bend modifier, you can just use that by pressing Y. That's what I did here. And once I kind of sized that, the next logical step for me was to maybe start building the back part, or the, you know, the actual shoe part where the character puts her leg in. So then for the cylinder, I just selected part of the top that I could maybe use, again, Z modeler to maybe extrude that piece out. And I also wanted to create the inset to make it look more like a pipe, right? So create that opening in the middle. So you can just do inset and then just do a quick extrude. And then for the green external shell, you can just pull it out pretty easy, just using the extrude. So next, I just creased my edges to make sure that they hold those sharp edges, and then just press Ctrl D to subdivide a bunch of times. And here I just used the taper modifier by just kind of squeezing down the part on the bottom and just tapering it outwards on the top to make to kind of again match the reference, to give that more of a dynamic look. And I do want to bring up the fact that I'm doing this after I build the base, because I knew if I tried to build that organic blobby sock part shape first, it would be I thought it would be a lot more difficult to then try to have these more you know, hard surface elements to kind of work with that shape. I thought it would be a lot easier to create most of the base and then add this. The only way I can think of it is just like a blobby blob, right? It's just a shoe part, but it's definitely the organic portion of this rollerblade. And I thought the best way to do it would be once I have the base done, so I can kind of just morph it into shape, and that's what I did here. Next, I'm going to work on the front piece, which is that pink block in the front. And instead of putting it into position and molding it or working on it there, I thought maybe it would be easier if it was in front, so I can really just focus on the base shape only at first before I even put it into position. Alright, so once I created that piece, then I kind of decided to attempt to move it and fit it into the rollerblade or roller skate. I guess the rollerblade. Alright, so here you see me, I hid that organic part, the light pink one, and just initially attempted to focus just on putting this into place and make sure it makes sense and it feels good. I was trying really hard with this piece to stay as close to the reference as possible, but I realized that for me to make this work, I did have to create kind of an odd slice there. You can see on the side that's a little bit different than the reference, but I couldn't figure out from the way the shape was flowing how else that would make sense where the toes go, right? So I think maybe that could have been done a little bit differently, but I think at the end it worked. But maybe that's one of the most prominent pieces that are not as close to the reference as the rest. Alright, and here you can just see me using the slice brush to just clean up the sharp sides and edges. Then I just brought back the, I'm just gonna keep calling it the blobby sock, and then just kind of slice it. And before you slice it, you do have to make sure that you don't have any subdivision levels, right, obviously. So I was okay deleting any subdivision levels I had on any of this geometry, because once again, this is not, you know, like a low poly version. This is just a high poly sculpt, so it didn't really matter. Next, I just fitted the blob a little bit better so it fits the overall shape. Alright, make sure you always save your work, because sometimes, dare I say it, things might crash or close, and that's a very unpleasant experience, so make sure always to save your work. So the next, after that, I decided to figure out how I'm going to build that pink armor on top, and there's definitely unlimited amount of ways to do this, but I thought it would be maybe interesting to try to initialize kind of a custom octagon and use that as a base shape to extrude another shape. So just getting creative and just trying to think outside the box. But again, this is not the only way of achieving something like this, but you can see right away there's that top flat part, and then you got the two sides sliding down, so it's a this shape is very close to what I needed, right? I just needed kind of the external shell, not just, I didn't need the actual tube. So you see me here subdividing that initial octagon and then just masking it out and then extruding the kind of the outside shell that I could use. So then I just deleted the original shape and then just used the knife tool to clean up all the edges, and you can see how quickly I kind of arrived to the shape that I was looking for. And then here it got a little tricky. I started to think about bending it, and I was very happy right here how it was nice and clean the way it bent. And then I tried to add more resolution and just create a sharper bend, but that's definitely not the way I would do it again if I had to go back. Alright, so once the shape was done, I battled with that inner crease a little bit. Maybe it's not the best way, the way I handled it and bend it. I could have spent a little more time and put a little more love into actual, the bend. But it's alright, I ended up cleaning it up by just subdividing it, smoothing it, and then using the H polish brush to get back to my initial shape. Here I knew that the top of it needed to be a lot longer, so I just simply used the move brush to extend it outward. And I didn't care about any of the edges being wobbly because I knew I can just cut them afterwards, like I'm doing here. I also wanted to make sure I have that sharp corner that you see in the reference that piece has. And by the time I was done cutting it and slicing, I realized that I lost some of those sharp edges. So I just ended up using H polish and the pinch tool to kind of bring back some of those sharp edges that I needed. Here I realized I had a few small touch-ups, which maybe could have been avoided if I just took a little more time bending and slicing the initial shape, but at the end it worked out. The next thing that I wanted to add was that little gray block that you see on top of the front pink element. So that was easy enough. I just simply grabbed a box and again just simply sliced it up. And one thing I noticed, if you grab something like the box and start slicing it, you can see right here there's no issues whatsoever. Like everything just seems to work, and I didn't have to, turn it into Dynamesh or subdivide it. It just slices beautifully while staying in the low poly, version. But if you get a little more sophisticated and try to create cuts that are a little more interesting, then you do need to subdivide it, because I was noticing that my, if you have more geometry or topology in some of these shapes, so if you z-remesh something, it just slices a lot better. Just my own personal experience. And then for that side gray cylinder bolt looking thing on the side, I just obviously grabbed a cylinder and used that to properly position and just mirror it to the other side. For the piece on top, that big bolt that you see, oh, that's not what I'm doing right now. So the next thing I'm gonna work on that very top little light pink panel looking thing. And there's a few different ways I could have done it. I could have brought in a box, but I just simply subdivided my shape a few times and just simply extracted kind of a blobby extraction, and then just used the knife tool to essentially sculpt the shape that I was looking for, right? So again, there's many different ways you can arrive to the same kind of point, but I thought this was maybe the fastest. Here I'm just fine-tuning some of the detail to match the reference maybe a little better, just as far as the proportions go. And next I wanted to tackle that big bolt that you see on the top, that gray thing. So I could have sculpted that, or I was thinking why not just take advantage of an existing IMM brush that already has, you know, something that is very similar. So that's what you see me do here, and I could have froze my shape. If you have subdivision, you can freeze it and then you can insert an IMM brush. But again, I didn't care about keeping my subdivision, so I just deleted them and then just used the IMM brush to insert the bolt and then split it into its own layer, and just subdivide it a few times to make it look you know, smooth. And that gave me a result that was very close to the reference without doing much of sculpting. To create those two lines in front, I was thinking there's probably a few different ways of doing it. I could have used a boolean and just subtracted a shape. Or you could also just simply mask it out, and then if you flip your mask and deflate instead of inflate, that will create that inset, and that worked out really nice in this case, so that was fine. Next, I saw in the reference there's a, in the side view, it looked like there's a screw in the very front of the rollerblade, but I realized the left one didn't have it, but the right one did. And I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not, but I thought, why not? Why don't I just subdivide that front piece a few times, or Z-remesh it and then subdivide it, and then just add, you know, that round portion. So I tried a few different methods. I thought maybe I'll just use a brush and just mask it, but then I ended up just grabbing a shape and just dragging it to make sure it's nice and smooth. And if you do Control-click inside the shape, it will smooth out the mask and then do a nice clean indentation. All right, here I was very happy with the final outcome. I thought this looked pretty good. The only thing that I wanted to see is if I merge all of these into one subtool and just adjust the shape a little bit. I thought that would be even closer, right? So make it maybe a little more narrow, and to make the reference a little better. All right, and here's a quick BPR of the final rollerblade. Once again, this is just a high-res model. So thank you again so much for watching. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next video.